Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
The scriptures speak of wars, more wars, and rumors of wars. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. I'm Sam Bushman. Benjamin Netanyahu on the way to speak with Donald right now. I wish Donald would speak with the American people and with Congress more and a little less with old Ben. What do you say? They're actually having to revise the war casualty count because people are debating if it's actual reality. We'll talk about all that. We also want to talk about how do you honor dead U.S. service men and women? How do you not support the war but honor them? Fair, honest questions, right? We the people can stand for liberty. Welcome to the broadcast. I'm Sam Bushman. Happy to have you along. Hope you had a delightful weekend. Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org, always with me on Monday mornings. Welcome, sir.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, Sam. Good to be here with you. Thank you.
Now, first issue, Benjamin Netanyahu going to speak with Ben. He's on his way right now, or speak with Trump right now. They want to discuss Iran, regional security, ongoing diplomatic efforts. Is Benjamin Netanyahu involved in diplomatic efforts? I don't think so. He's involved in bombing everybody and their dog. Uh-oh, did we lose Lowell?
Oh, no, I'm still here.
Yeah, he's bombing everyone and their dog instead of diplomatic relations there. Why is Trump meeting with Ben again? Do we got to meet with Ben every other day? Why is this guy even so important? He's not involved in diplomatic relations of any kind.
No, he's not, and yet it seems like Israel runs this country. They've got most of Congress in their back pocket, and they've got the president in their pocket, just as they've had all the preceding, half dozen presidents in their pocket. It's pretty clear to me that Israeli, AIPAC and the big money funders of AIPAC pretty much tell the American top brass what to do and when to do it, because it seems like we do their bidding almost all the time, Sam.
It's a tragic reality, and I don't know why Ben gets such an audience with Trump whenever he seems to want it. I just don't understand it, ladies and gentlemen. But this directly, in my opinion, relates. The Pentagon revises Iran war count casualties. I guess there's a big old problem with the database. They had to modify the database. People are freaking out and going, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. And I guess they updated after changing figures. Now reporting 18 U.S. service members killed, 624 wounded since things started in, February 28th. And the most important part is the revised reporting has prompted questions from lawmakers about transparency and how casualty numbers are actually classified. You see, they classify them like, well, when the war stopped for a little bit because we had a ceasefire and now the war's back on, hey, those are different casualty numbers, right? Or, the overseas contractors are different from the overseas military fighters, right? And we go on, and there's all these game playing to where we don't even have a real number anymore. Lowell?
Huh, yeah. So I wasn't aware that going on, although I certainly do believe that there are more than 17 dead, which was the official number. Apparently that's been upgraded to 18, but I think the number's a lot higher than that, and so do a lot of other people. But what you just said kind of explains what they're doing with the numbers. Saying, well, this wasn't really killed during the actual war, so we can't count it. But there's still casualties.
Yeah, and if you're not on the front lines, then it doesn't count. It's a different category, and we just go on and on and on, and everything we're doing is minimizing the numbers. The reason that I bring this up is because it dovetails so nicely with Ron Paul's incredible column this week, How to Honor Dead U.S. Service Members. You don't honor them by lying about the count, the body count, and playing games with, those guys don't count. They're not important. They're not on the front lines, or they were in the last war, or whatever we do to minimize the reality and the stark situation that we find ourselves in. The way you honor them is you be honest about that, first of all, right?
Yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, if a person dies in the service of the country, he ought to be honored as such. And yet, if he dies when the war is so-called off for a few weeks,
Let's get your connection. Let's get your connection fixed really quick. Liz will work on that. I don't know why it's all warbly. Talk again.
Then it's important to
yeah. Let's get her to fix that. It's I don't know what it is. It's like you're underwater on air or something. We'll get that fixed. In the meantime, though, I want people to understand. So I don't mean to attack everybody about this war and about what's going on. But first, why are we spending so much time giving Netanyahu, stand up opportunities before Congress over and over, meeting with Trump over and over and over and over? We don't need to give him, I thought we had most favored nation trading status with China. We've got most favored nation access for Benjamin Netanyahu, and I don't understand why. And then now we're revising the war casualty numbers because people are complaining. It's prompting questions from Congress and others going, hey, are we even getting the straight scoop on this? That's a real concern when President Trump criticized Barack Obama and everybody else for not giving us the straight scoop. Now we're seeing this under President Trump. That's a great concern, and it dovetails really well with Ron Paul's column, How to Honor the Dead U.S. Service Members. How do you honor them? And you start by telling the truth about them, Lowell.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sam. Back in April, Trump told Fox News that Iran really has nothing going for them. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, totally gone. They have nothing, end quote. That's what he said. Well, here we are 3 months later. U.S. bases in the region continue to be attacked. U.S. military equipment worth billions continues to be destroyed. Service members continue to be killed or injured. Right, and so this war in Iran has, that was launched by Trump without congressional authorization, because the president believed that Iran, at 6,000 miles away, posed an existential threat to the United States, or so that was the claim, right? I mean, I don't think he actually believed that, but he had to do what Netanyahu wanted him to do, and Netanyahu, he wants to kill everybody around him. He doesn't want to make nice with any of his neighbors. But at the same time, Sam, Trump believed Iran was so weak that that Iran would fold like a house of cards if we just bombed them for a few days. And then a government friendly to the United States would take over.
And I think he was led to believe that by our own internal senators and stuff like that, who literally rallied for the war, cheerleaded for the war, explained, hey, we're the baddest country in the world, we can take them out. And, Benjamin and some, senators from the United States, some of them aren't even alive anymore, but they were the ones pushing for this, acting like we could make short work of this. And it turned out to be the furthest from the truth.
Yeah. And it really makes no sense at all, because how could a country like that, 6,000 miles away, be a threat, but also be just days away from a collapse if you drop a few bombs on them, right? It makes no sense at all. And in fact, I think that a lot of high military people briefed Trump on the fact that Iran would not be easily beaten. and that, what they said to Trump in those early days is coming true, unfortunately. And, well, unfortunate for the people of Iran, I guess, because, unless we start bombing them again and killing them. So, I don't know, it's really a complex situation, and we shouldn't be over there intervening. We shouldn't be bombing Iran. Particularly when the U.S. Congress hasn't even declared war. And see, that's one of the points that Ron Paul makes in his column, is that the Constitution requires that war be declared by the Congress after extensive deliberation. The framers wanted to safeguard the new country from the whims of a King George or other monarch who could take this country to war. The Patriots fought for independence from exactly the political system we have in place today, because they understood how destructive endless and foolish wars can be to a country. End of quote. That's Ron Paul speaking.
And Ron Paul finishes an incredible column, Lowell, by saying if the president really wants to honor our military, and then he puts a plan together, right? So he's not just complaining, he's actually got a plan.
Yeah, and the plan is this, quote, he will declare an end to this pointless war, bring all of our troops home from the region, and announce that the destroyed U.S. bases will not be rebuilt. It is time to end the American empire and come home. End of quote. Sam, that's classic Ron Paul.
Couldn't agree more Bring it on. What do we got to do, President Trump? Because I think that's really the key. And it's not that I want to leave those people hanging, but when we talk about the numbers in this war, the Iran war, how many Iranians are dead? How many innocents are dead? We need to, if we're going to start categorizing numbers, let's start to categorize that. How many innocents are dead on either side? We got to then back that into the Ukraine / Russia war, because you kind of go, okay, now they're saying, Iran is saying, hey, Russia is helping other countries do this and that, and Israel's doing, and now and if we're not very careful, these wars are going to be kind of come one and the same big, massive, go ahead and skip the break, will you please, Liz? One massive deal, right? And so we got to really think about that too. How many people have died in the Russia-Iran war? And then will those two wars kind of merge or become somehow linked in a way? That's what's being discussed right now, Lowell.
Yeah, I think they are linked. Certainly, our interventionist foreign policy is identical in both areas of the world, both regions of the world, and it's a sad deal. But you know, it's also it's not a partisan deal, Sam, because both parties are in the tank on this fighting, this interventionist foreign policy. Napolitano, in his column this week, talks about this perpetual war, the American presidency and perpetual war. He drives home...
And that's, in my mind, how they're linked, this perpetual war, this we just can't seem to find a war that we don't want to promote and be part of.
Yeah. Every administration over the past half a dozen presidencies, they've expanded military action without a formal declaration of war and without clear evidence that the targeted country even posed a threat to the United States. And he goes through the last 6 administrations. George W. Bush hitting Iraq after it invaded Kuwait in 1990. Congress authorized the use of military force for that, but it stopped short of declaring war. President Bill Clinton employed military force in the bombing campaign against Serbia, not authorized by Congress. George Bush, president, invaded Afghanistan after 9/11, but the invasion of Iraq remains, quote, one of the most controversial and catastrophic military actions in modern American history, end of quote. And when you think about the 500,000 Iraqi children who died as a result of that invasion, you get a sense of that really was one of the most catastrophic actions that we took. Well, did Iraq pose a credible threat to the U.S.? No, not hardly.
And we were clearly lied to on that one. The American people should sit up and take notice.
That's right, yes. And President Barack Obama criticized the war in Iraq, and yet he intervened in Libya in 2011 without authorization from Congress. And in fact, that's how Gaddafi got killed and how the communist regime came to be in Libya. And so then President Joe Biden continued with the pattern with military operations there in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, and Ukraine, and none of them, had congressional authorization. So now, in fact, the United Nations, U.S. and Russia are both members of the United Nations, but even the UN Charter does not permit war except for defensive purposes or when authorized by the Security Council. So a lot of good they're doing. Anyway, Sam, President Trump, he campaigned on ending the wars, and yet his administration launched missile strikes on Syria in 2017 and 18 without congressional authorization, as required by the states which ratified the Constitution. He assassinated the Iranian general Soleimani in Iraq in January of 2020. And today, he threatens to extinguish the entire Iranian Persian civilization. Napolitano says this, quote, every intervention generates unintended consequences, some of which become the justification for the next intervention. History teaches that the interventions don't liberate, they subordinate, control, and dominate, end of quote. Well, Judge Knapp rightly observes that expanding the war power abroad expands police power at home. And this is a point that Ron Paul has made time and time again, that the two are linked, right? So if we get foreign intervention abroad, then we get mass surveillance at home, mass attacks on free speech, and mass incarceration and or deportation. And that's just at the top of the hour news. I heard that this NFL player from Kenya just got deported, right? And so because he overstayed his visa. Well, lots of bad things happen when you have this interventionist foreign policy, something that the founders warned against, right? Think of James Madison, who wrote that, quote, of all the enemies to public liberty, war is perhaps the most to be dreaded, end quote. Because war concentrates power in the executive, it increases the public debt, it expands surveillance, it limits civil liberties, it encourages secrecy. There's so many things that go wrong when you have a policy of war. And so near the end of his column, Napolitano writes this, quote, a government organized around perpetual military readiness acquires the earmarks of an empire. Foreign policies of empires are based on dominance and force. Foreign policies of republics are based on commerce, diplomacy, and genuine national defense. And notice the difference between those two foreign policies. He continues, military force should be reserved for defending the United States against actual or imminent attacks, not for remaking foreign societies, policing civil wars, or pursuing humanitarian objectives, end of quote. Right? So very interesting column by Napolitano.
Well, and Paul Craig Roberts jumps in and does a great job, too, saying, you know, it's one thing to debate the numbers. It's one thing to talk about the wars. It's one thing to decide how justified it is. But at the end of the day, people are dying for nothing. They have in countless historical realities, and they are now. Lowell?
Yep, he writes, quote, if we are ever to get America back on the right track toward the restoration of a limited government republic and the dismantling of the national security state and the restoration of a non-interventionist foreign policy, then it is imperative that the American people accept that reality. What is that reality? He says the soldiers in the Vietnam War died for nothing, and the soldiers dying in Trump's war in Iran are dying for nothing. For that matter, those U.S. troops who died in the U.S. government's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq also died for nothing. End of quote. Well, I think Roberts is raising a good point, Sam. Whenever military personnel are honored in public gatherings here in our country, which happens all over the place, very common, most people in their minds, they think that those military service members participated in the defense of our freedoms and our values, in the defense of our country. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what they actually did. Have the states been in jeopardy, right? I mean, have my religious values been threatened by Russia or by Iran or by China or by Cuba?
No, they were threatened by America and COVID. That's all.
Yeah. And so the U.S. has deployed military personnel in dozens of countries. And so I'm asking the question, are they all fighting to defend us here in the States? And fighting to defend the values?
I think most military men and women leave thinking the answer is yes, and they come home clearly saying no. In fact, I remember just recently, there's a video a couple of months ago that this gentleman who was in the military was saying, we don't want to go fight in Iran. We don't want to give our lives up and not be able to be with our children. And he tried to explain, we don't want to go to this. And they literally drug him out and broke his arm on this video and everything. It was a sad tale to tell. And I think he had the guts to articulate what many of us believe, that it's just not wise. Now, I mentioned that the Iran/Israel and the Russia/Ukraine wars are linked. And they might not be linked in the fact that they're one coordinated war, but understand they're separate conflicts, folks, but they increasingly influence each other, okay? The strongest link that we have is it turns out that Iran is supplying Russia with drones. You heard me. And other military equipment used in Ukraine. Russia has provided Iran with military technology and intelligence, not to mention diplomatic support. Both governments oppose many U.S. and NATO policies. So, you look at that alone and you go, wow, right? Israel and the Ukraine share a common adversary. But, quote, they have different priorities. Israel they say is the primary security concern is Iran. Ukraine's primary security is Russia. And so since Russia and Iran cooperate closely, well, Israel and Ukraine have not always agreed on policy and military support because they must prioritize their own national realities. At the end of the day, they'll be working together. Not only that, weapons and technology move from conflict to conflict. Energy markets directly connect the wars. The United States and its allies must divide resources to deal with both conflicts at the same time. China and North Korea, folks, are part of the broader picture. Neither is, quote, directly, they say, involved in any of this, but North Korea has supported the Russia's war effort. China has maintained close ties with Russia and Iran, right? So these arrangements certainly create the concern. Why do I bring that up? Well, because now we're going to take this Israel organization and we're going to embed it into our own military. Lowell, the latest column, really highlights this.
Yep, this came from Ron Paul's Campaign for Liberty. John McCardle writes an email that I received and read. Basically, H.R. 8800, which is the National Defense Authorization Act of 2027, this is commonly known as the NDAA, it narrowly passed the U.S. House last week, Sam, and it still contains Section 219, which would establish a U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. Now, what is that? Well, it would require the Defense Secretary to appoint an official responsible for coordinating joint research, testing, weapons development, technology integration, and industrial cooperation between the USA and Israel. The initiative would cover areas including missile defense, artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, cybersecurity, quantum technology, electronic warfare, and weapons co-production. And this is a coordination, he writes, that would go deep into our military infrastructure with an ally, quote-unquote, ally, who has a long history of spying on our country. And not to mention the USS Liberty, which they clearly attacked in 1967, mercilessly attacked for over an hour, and then later claimed that they were it was a mistaken identity attack. They really hadn't intended to attack them, right? Anyway, so he's asking in this email, do we want a military alliance with a country that is at war with all of its neighbors in the Middle East? No, I guess that's my question. Do we want that kind of alliance with a country that is ethnically cleansing the West Bank and continuing the genocide in Gaza? I mean, I don't think so.
Well, what we're seeing is a world war in the making, okay? You've literally got Iran, Russia, China, North Korea on one side. You've got the United States, the Ukraine, and Israel on the other side. The rest are trying to stay out of it right now, but they won't be able to for long. That's really where we're at, Lowell. And energy is going to be the core of the crux, or the crux of the core of the discussion. At some point, people will be forced because of energy, because they'll be stopping the world's economic engine by this economic shutdown via oil and everything else. So if we're not very careful, these wars are going to all start to overlap. And if we're not very careful, Cuba and Venezuela will be drug into it in ways that we haven't even foreseen yet.
Well, and I think we'll never get the Strait of Hormuz open again, Sam. I think that's part of the plan. I think they want to choke the energy supplies of the world and put us in a very tight position. They want to squeeze out the middle class. They want to make it harder on you and me, Sam. So that
we got to look at the Senate right now to make sure NDAA doesn't completely pass, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Contact your senators. Insist that they do not approve the NDAA from the U.S. House. Sam?
And especially make sure that we do not allow Israel to become embedded in the United States when it comes to all these different, quote, partnerships they have planned. It is absolutely a nightmare when it comes to U.S. sovereignty. Lowell Nelson, campaignforliberty.org. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, Sam. Good to be with you.
Doing a phenomenal job, ladies and gentlemen. Also, the rock star of Campaign for Liberty, John McCardle, doing a phenomenal job. God save our constitutional republic.
When you try.